Welcome back to the Smash Parody series, a production within my shared universe concept, Shareverse. I'm AJ, and much like the original video, this remaster will cover Seasons 2 and 3, but also the quote-unquote movie of Super Smash Lesbians Ultimate. Season 1's overview was composed of 3 videos for how dense a lot of it was, so it's a drastic difference that the next 2 seasons will be glossed over in one video. It is important to go over them, however, and add a few details that the original rundown did not have. On the second week of February 2020, Season 2 begins where Season 1 left off, Kronia awakening from her coma. My reflection immediately got the notification and rushed to the studio's hospital to explain everything to her. Knowing that she probably had nowhere to go, he enlisted her in the production, planning for her to make her debut at that night's premiere. She was given a secondary role for Byleth, because where else was he gonna place her? That night's episode started off fairly normally, but with the start of a new season, AJ pulled a Starla move and surprised the entire crew with Kronia's reveal, with her first opponent being Byleth. What could possibly go wrong? Oh. Byleth and his infused god powers beat Kronia to a pulp, and was right about to kill her until he got bonked over the head, as 3 new automatically recruited members enlisted Kronia to their team. The Gerudo champion Urbosa, a Salazzle, and the space actress French fighter Twintel revealed themselves as the anti-Smash 4 group, with Kronia as the final member that they have been scouting for. We'll get into who played what roles in a minute, but I would like to bring up the group's boss. Unlike Rosalina's Smash 4 group, there wasn't a member who spearheaded anti-Smash 4. Instead, members were ordered by a higher-up in the Nintendo division of the Subcoral Alignment, who conveniently showed up to the set after the premiere. The Astral Mayor of New York, Pauline. She explained how she wanted to make a group of Nintendo employees that represented the late 2010s, as opposed to Rosalina's group, which focused on the first half of the decade. And if it wasn't obvious, Pauline was jealous of Rosalina, her being the astral goddess of the company and appearing in almost everything at the time, compared to Pauline, who had been with the company since the 80s, but laid in obscurity for decades. But with Mario Odyssey restoring her relevancy in the spotlight, that gave her the chance to start her own group and enter a new generation for Astral Souls in the company. However, Pauline played it smart, as she let her girls do all of the work and treated them equally, and it also allowed Pauline to not be a member of the production. As for her girls, aside from Kronia, they all got secondary roles, with Urbosa for Ganon, because what else was she gonna play, Salazzle for Piranha Plant, but Twintel was the outlier. Everyone assumed that someone from ARMS was coming to Smash, so Twintel was reserved as the secondary role for whatever ARMS character got into Ultimate. Within one episode, Season 2 introduced Byleth being vengeful against Kronia, and the heated tension between Rosalina and Pauline. It seemed that Season 2's work was all cut out. Surely there wouldn't be a worldwide event in 2020 that would put many of these scenarios on ice, right? Okay, before we get to COVID, it's important to note one other moment in Season 2. Later in the month, Smash Lesbians held a crossover with the revival series of Wild and Crazy Guy Day of the Disney Alignment. The crossover acted as an unofficial advertisement for the release of Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection, and the respected WAC members were in attendance. X and Zero noticed that there were Mii costumes based off of them, and requested to participate in a team battle, knowing well that by doing so, they would also become members to the production. And considering their primary colors being red and blue, their opponents would be couples that also share the same color scheme. And while their opponents were tough, some even on a godly level, X and Zero won, probably because they were that night's guests. Not surprisingly, X got a secondary role for Mega Man because that's his brother, But Zero asked for something more than just a fighter's role. When working for WAC, Zero was not one to be in front of the camera. So he asked if he could be a referee for Smash Lesbians Ultimate. And AJ said yes immediately, since he thought it would be useful to have an extra hand in the commentator's room and someone that could be around to prevent Starla from taking total control when AJ wasn't there. And by the end of the crossover, the production was being held by 3 hosts: a magician, a robot, and a reflection. Okay, and then COVID happened. So in Shareverse, Astral Souls are not affected by major events that occur for normal souls. In other words, COVID could not affect Astral Souls because that was a normal soul issue. However, for Astral Souls who work for normal soul companies and make productions intended for normal souls, they were shit out of luck trying to make anything as the world went dark. Despite this, content made for an Astral Soul audience continued business as usual. And since Smash Lesbians was one of those products, Season 2 episodes became easier to produce. And for Astral Souls who didn't have a job, ratings for the production were at an all-time high. Season 2 turned Ultimate into a show with comfort, and that one that any Astral Soul could watch during a rough time. There were some drawbacks to this, such as the planned fight Melina was supposed to have with Spawn getting cancelled, putting her DLC quest in jeopardy. And COVID also put an indefinite hold on the feud between Rosalina and Pauline. By the time the lockdowns were lifted, neither woman had an interest in getting back to their rivalry. Despite everyone doing the best they could with the production, Byleth still felt uneased by the presence of Kronya roaming around and attempting to become a better person. The key word here is attempt. It was getting hard for him to interact with other members or even find the words to forgive Kronya. But one day, he saw a fight that would change his perception of the production, where the victor was Jen Walters, who portrayed the Ike role, and is one of the most powerful Astral Souls in her tier. Amazed by her skills, he asked if she could train him to become stronger. Jen, being commanding in both the courthouse and battlefield, was shocked by this request, but accepted regardless. In between episodes, Byleth would train relentlessly at Jennifer's snow cabin in Alaska, getting to understand the Parody series better while doing so. But he was still planning to get an understanding on his nemesis and how he should approach her. Eventually, Season 2's finale had come underway, and this time around, NetherRealm revealed the major expansion to Mortal Kombat 11, known as MK11 Aftermath. This included a new story mode that made the best ending non-canon, 3 new fighters, and a free update that saw the return of friendships for every character. But surprisingly, Katana's friendship had her play patty cake with Melina. This was a shock to the DLC crew, and no one knew what it meant for Melina. Does that mean her quest ended? Was it still going? Even though she wasn't playable, Melina technically had an in-game model, meaning her quest was over in the most basic definition. But Melina couldn't stand for a passive victory. She wanted her achievement to be monumental. She told AJ she wanted a fight on the Smash set, not only making her a member, but specified her opponent to be Nami, the Warner Alignment representative of the Mario role. Both girls went back since the Pierce the Heavens storyline, where Nami routed a half-conscious Melina to cause some murders. Since then, the two had beef. Nami wasn't opposed to the challenge, and so that became the Season 2 finale. In the original video, I said Rex and Luffy fought outside of the studio, but here in the remasters, I'm scrapping that. Rex couldn't last a fight against Goku, let alone Luffy, and this was before he unlocked Gear 5. Back on the set, Melina had won the fight, and though she had the option to kill, she chose not to. She had been staying in Earthrealm for 5 years by that point, and shown a dramatic growth as a person by being with the right people. The fight concluded with both fighters making amends for their hatred. And as for what role Melina would portray, she picked a secondary role for Dr. Mario, mainly since her sister was the choral alignment representation for the Mario role. Nami was also a secondary role for Dr. Mario, and the primary role was portrayed by Freya, who herself was a clone of one of the Luigi roles. Shortly after the finale, Krania was in her apartment that the Anti-Smash 4 group provided her with, and she wasn't expecting anyone, but then Byleth showed up. The two never spoke or fought again since the premiere, but he came to talk. Byleth told Jennifer previously about his problems, and she immediately understood. He was surprised that his Smash teacher also made some regrettable choices, but she learned to forgive herself before forgiving others. And after some self-reflecting, Byleth did some research. He looked into both Fodlan archives and the ruins of Shambhala. He didn't uncover much, but what he deduced was that Krania was probably an orphan taken by those who slither in the dark at a young age, forced their beliefs about the surface worlds onto her, and groomed her into becoming a top-ranking Agarthan assassin, only to be disposed once she was of no use. Even though Krania didn't confirm or deny these claims, Byleth concluded by telling her that what she did wasn't her fault, and that despite it all, he forgave her. And Krania took it well. Granted, she didn't fully trust him, and she's still not a law-abiding citizen, but she also accepted the apology and said she couldn't wait to have a rematch the next time they were on set. With her being presumably the sole survivor from Shambhala, a friendly bond had been established by the Agarthans and the Nabateans. In Season 3, there's less stuff to talk about, despite lockdowns being lifted at this time. I could probably sum up the season in 2 paragraphs. To no one's surprise, Min Min got into Smash as the first character in the second Fighter's Pass, not only joining the Anti-Smash 4 group, but giving Twintelle a secondary role. And much like Byleth before, Min Min portrayed herself in the Parody series. This wasn't a problem for Rex, as he was easily able to beat her. And honestly, the next major point of Season 3 is the finale. Not a lot went down in this season, so let's jump ahead to when Steve shattered the internet. When AJ was pre-planning roles for the Parody series, depending on what character got into Smash, there were 2 mainstream games that could be tied to 2 mainstream comic companies. He decided that if Fortnite got into Smash, those roles would be portrayed by Marvel, since Fortnite typically favors them over DC. For Minecraft, that would be portrayed by DC, and it was convenient since one of their most popular Astro Souls is a certified lesbian. So the fraction of a second I saw the stone texture in the reveal trailer, I was dreading the thought of Harley being in the Parody series for Shareverse. But not only was Steve coming to Smash, but so was Alex, a zombie, and an Enderman. And so AJ immediately had to send out invitations to people who absolutely hated him. As mentioned, Harley portrayed the Steve role, and it easily allowed her partner Ivy to portray the Alex role, for being a redhead who wore green. But she also got a secondary role for Piranha Plant because of plants. Meanwhile for Zombie, AJ decided to give the role to Enchantress, since she was an old hag who did green stuff. And for Enderman, that role was given to Raven, because... no idea. Much like the Dragon Ball MILFs, this group of 4 was given the title of the DC Minecraft Girls. Harley came up with the name, and quite frankly, nobody objected to it. Their inclusions saw a lot of character dynamics being played around. Ivy has a hatred for AJ since one of her estranged daughters died from his astral father back in the 90s. Raven and AJ hate each other since the Universal Disaster storyline, plus Raven is infused with the Shining Ray, much like Melina. Ivy was also a part of a team of 3 alongside Azula and Asuka from the Digital Defenders storyline, before Asuka self-sabotaged the team by secretly working undercover. Ahmnet hates Enchantress for some ancient-ass reason, and with Selena already portraying the Incineroar role, the Gotham City Sirens were now in the production, and AJ couldn't be more stressed about that. You could call it hindsight for how top-tier Steve is, but AJ was nervous that Harley would beat Rex. So instead of being there for his group that he always was in support of, AJ sent the crew to Jen in hopes of training them alongside Byleth. They only had a few weeks to train, but during that time, Mortal Kombat 11's final DLC was announced as Combat Pack 2, and if Mileena wasn't sure if her quest had been completed during Aftermath, it was officially confirmed that she would make it into MK11 as DLC at the very last second. This spark of motivation made her exceed all of Jen's training, eagerly waiting for the finale to roll around. And when it came, on the day Steve got into Smash no less, the DLC crew, plus Byleth, had their schedule cut out. First, Rex battled Harley, and in a surprise twist, he defeated her with ease, shocking the viewers, the DC girls, and AJ. And if that wasn't fulfilling enough, the DLC crew, plus Byleth, participated in a team battle against the Sirens, and it was a bloodbath. While Mileena got eliminated, she took Laportis down with her. Rex and Byleth double-teamed on the couple, where Rex once more got the upper hand against Harley. And on that note, Season 3 concluded with a major victory for the DLC crew, not excluding Byleth. So, that's it, right? Well, not quite. In the original video, I considered the next plot point to be a movie for Astro Souls, but after thinking about it, it's easier to call it Season 3M, since it ties to the Season 3 finale. Also, good God, that thumbnail! Back before I started to give each video a proper illustration. Usually I do. Initially, my reflection had no idea what the plot would be. Would it be a recap of the first 3 seasons, despite all of them being accessible to Astro Souls, or an original story with the risk of adding more members to the production? Eventually, the inspiration drew back to Smash Bros. Ultimate. Considering how that game's starting roster is the 8 original fighters, and by November 2020 there were 8 DLC characters, an idea was hatched. The major plot of 3M was AJ hosting a tournament pitting the 8 fighters of Smash 64 against the 8 DLC characters of Ultimate to see who was the strongest. Both primary and secondary roles were allowed for each fighter, on top of Seth Girl's representation. And it was immediately apparent that some participants would struggle in numbers compared to others, with some roles only being portrayed by one member. These matches were tallied up by the winner of each fight. To no one's surprise, the Mario roles cleaned house, with there being 4 secondary roles on top of the primary one. But surprisingly, there was a tie with Ruby and Azura, reflections that were the sole portrayers of the Banjo and Kazooie role. Against the odds, the duo beat the Dragon Ball MILFs and DC girls by themselves and were looking to take the trophy home. Of the 5 Mario roles, as well as Helen, Nami took up their opponent for a tiebreaker, and in their most powerful form no less, Drexy. And remember, Nami is a mortal woman with no Devil Fruit powers, no hockey, so she's fighting this thing on wits alone. This was a really tough match, with Nami almost getting eaten alive. But by prying the beast's mouth open with her climate baton, Nami swung the match back in her favor and sent an electric current into Drexy's mouth, causing it to implode from a thunderbolt tempo. But don't worry, in the Season 4 premiere, the couple returned to the production on good spirits. The Mario roles were happy for this massive victory, and Nami was given a trophy for her troubles. But Season 3M wasn't only about the tournament. For you see, the events of the plot occurred on November 17th, 2020, the same day Mileena got into MK11. And much like before, she didn't want to casually achieve her victory, as her and Rex decided to have a fight between the 2 members as a proper send-off. But the catch was that neither fought in the right mindset. While Mileena went easy on Rex, Rex pulled no punches, especially knowing how dangerous she could be as an enemy. Mileena was shocked by his aggressive fighting and actually lost. But Rex wasn't the only thing she had to struggle with that night. While Nami was fighting Drexy, Ivy came across the DLC crew and Byleth, still enraged on how she lost so easily during Season 3's finale. She wanted a proper fight between them, and with Melina eager to a rematch, she went into the fight at full power. But with her strength being slightly depleted from the last fight, she had a hard time trying to keep up with Ivy, especially when Ivy proceeded to beat the shit out of her in the match. But immediately after their fight, Nami was announced the winner of the tournament, giving Melina a spike in motivation, jealousy, and energy as she ordered Ivy for a rematch, despite being badly injured. But Ivy saw it as an opportunity to flex, as she went fully green and summoned a giant plant monster on set, infusing herself with it. Despite her Shining Ray powers, Melina was in no condition to fight, but pushed on regardless, losing a leg and both arms in the process. Ultimately, her attempt was futile as Ivy won the rematch, with Melina clinging on to life. And with that, the matches for the night came to a close, and everyone went to the locker rooms to get changed. Meanwhile, AJ asked Katana to watch over her sister's body alongside Rex, in case another fight broke out. Ivy and Harley finished cleaning up and were about to leave the building. With an ounce of her remaining strength, Melina sprung up on one leg, grabbed Pyrrhus' Aegis sword with her mouth, and leapt towards Ivy. She slashed the sword right through her torso, just feet away from the front door. The final moments in Season 3M left a bad impression on the production and the DLC crew. It made Melina look like a sore loser. But remember, she just completed her DLC quest that very day, so AJ was not liable for her actions. Season 3M concludes with Harley shrieking over the death of her girlfriend. But that's fine, Ivy was revived the following week. And so, that was the middle seasons of Super Smash Lesbians Ultimate Remastered, this time more refined in detail than in the originals. To be honest, there are some other Shareverse storylines I would like to touch on before getting to Season 4's Remastered, so I don't know when I will come back to discussing the Parody series. All I know is that I want to get back to Disney Fighting Evolution and finish that storyline. So if you like the remasters, please like and subscribe. With that, I'm AJ, and I'll see you all in the next one.